What if the game wasn't just rigged, but rigged to collapse under its own noise? What if the very traits they said would make you invisible are the same traits now making you unforgettable? Ascenders, this isn't a motivational monologue. This is your broadcast from the underground, because while the world chased chaos, some of you were building, alone, off-grid, out of reach. And now the shift has begun. Everything flipped overnight. Those who kept their heads down and their minds sharp are rising. You didn't chase clout, you cultivated clarity. Sigma isn't a trend, it's a return to form. The return of focused masculinity, strategic detachment, tactical silence. You're not here to explain, you're here to move. And something's happening now. People who once called you cold, distant, or antisocial, they're realizing you weren't broken, you were calibrated. And guess what? Some of them are finally defending you. Loudly, fiercely, and publicly. We're going to break all of this down. No fluff, no surface talk, just raw, calculated truth. Lock in, subscribe to Sigma Ascends. We don't follow noise, we build signal. Let's get into it. 1. The silence recalibrated. Silence was never a weakness. That was a lie they fed you to keep you visible, predictable, and manageable. But Sigma males have always known silence isn't absence, it's processing, and more importantly, it's leverage. Every time a Sigma chooses not to speak, he's not conceding power. He's redirecting it inward. He's absorbing the temperature of the room, not to adapt, but to know precisely how and when to shift it. That's recalibration. That's not hiding, that's preparing. The loudest people in society have convinced themselves that being seen equals being powerful. But when everyone's shouting, the person who doesn't need to speak becomes the one worth listening to. Sigma silence is not just the absence of sound, it's a recalibration of attention. It forces people to lean in, to guess, to wonder. That's a power few can handle, and even fewer can match. While others were obsessed with being heard, Sigmas learned how to observe. And observation is power. It's how you learn the cracks in systems, the tells in people, the lies behind the performance. The world is drowning in data, but starved for perception. And Sigmas? We deal in perception. That's our trade. Recalibration also means detaching from environments that dilute your power. The Sigma male doesn't hang on to friendships out of nostalgia. He doesn't stay in jobs for status. He doesn't conform to beliefs just to avoid friction. Every exit is a strategy. Every withdrawal is a step towards something more aligned. That's how recalibration works. It strips you down to signal only. No noise, no dead weight. But don't confuse this recalibration for passivity. It's the opposite. Sigmas are aggressive in silence. The silence is an act of war, a calculated choice to let others exhaust themselves while we sharpen. While society scrolls, we study. While they react, we reset. While they panic, we prepare. And here's the thing, when Sigmas finally do speak, it's surgical. One sentence cuts through hours of posturing. One look rewrites the hierarchy. It's not volume, it's velocity, not length, precision. People feel it in their nervous system. They know you don't speak unless the moment demands a shift. And when it does, you shift it. That's the recalibration. It's not silence for silence's sake. It's a system that says, I don't waste energy. I don't chase approval. I don't explain myself to the unqualified. That recalibration flips the social rules. Suddenly, people who used to ignore you now overanalyze you. They try to decode your presence, your timing, your distance. You became the mirror they didn't expect to face, and now they either evolve or avoid. You're not just seen now, you're studied. And that, Ascenders, is when the game truly flips. You are no longer the one adjusting to the world. You are the adjustment. There was a time when being a mystery got you labeled as a problem. If you weren't loud, predictable, and easy to read, people assumed you were broken, or worse, irrelevant. Society didn't just misunderstand the Sigma male, it tried to erase him. But now, those same traits that got you dismissed are being celebrated, not quietly, not reluctantly, but publicly, even shamelessly. The same culture that told you to open up more, to smile more, to network more, is now quoting your behavior in self-help books and executive coaching sessions. Why? Because everything flipped. People are starting to realize that the ones who didn't play the game were never on the sidelines. They were building their own board. And the truth is finally catching up with the noise. There's a hunger now, a desperate craving for the traits the world once mocked. Stoicism, restraint, purposeful independence. Everyone's burnt out on the loud ones, the performers, the emotional exhibitionists. It's exhausting watching people bleed out for attention 24/7. Now, silence looks like discipline, mystery looks like depth, and detachment looks like power. They used to say, he's too quiet. Now they say, he's composed. They used to say, he keeps to himself. Now they say, he's focused. They used to say, he's antisocial. Now they say, he's selective. What changed? Nothing changed about you. The world just caught up. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't about validation. Sigma doesn't care if he's finally being seen. This shift is not an ego trip, it's confirmation. Confirmation that all those lonely nights, all that separation, all those moments where you stood alone on principle, it wasn't in vain. It was a precursor. You weren't wrong. You were early. The culture swung too far toward chaos. Everything became reactive, emotional, desperate. And in that breakdown, something primal started resurfacing. The need for stability, for clarity, for conviction. And guess who already had that locked in? The ones they once overlooked. That's why Sigma is rising, not because the world changed its mind, but because the world hit a wall. It's not just men waking up, it's women too. The same women who were told to chase the loudest guy in the room are now craving the one who doesn't need to speak, the one who doesn't beg for attention, the one who isn't glued to his phone or enslaved by validation. They're beginning to notice the calm presence over the chaotic one. Even in business, leadership and influence, the Sigma model is being copied. Entrepreneurs are branding themselves as lone wolves. CEOs are writing about strategic solitude. Public speakers are suddenly pushing less talking, more moving. It's everywhere, but you knew it before it was cool. Because for you, it wasn't a tactic. It was natural law. And this is where your leverage compounds. You're not adjusting, you're being revealed. The ones who used to out-talk you are now trying to outlearn you. The ones who used to mock your solitude are now paying to visit retreats in silence. The world is scrambling to replicate what you built in peace. And most of them can't, because this isn't a costume you wear. It's wiring. You never needed the applause, but now it echoes anyway. And maybe the most ironic twist of all? You're not even asking for credit. You're too focused on execution. While they're finally catching up to your blueprint, you're writing the next version. Sigma isn't standing still. While society turns the Sigma male into a trend, you've already moved on. Evolved, upgraded. That's the part no one sees coming. This isn't a comeback. It's a consequence. You stayed solid when everything else collapsed. Now you're being modeled, not for who you pretended to be, but for who you refused to stop being. And the world can't unsee it now. Power doesn't scream anymore. It watches, it measures, it waits. That's the evolution no one expected. We're living in an era where attention is louder than truth, and yet the person who controls the room is the one who barely speaks. That's not coincidence. That's design. And that's Sigma. We've entered the era of quiet dominance, the shift from spectacle to substance, the shift from noise to gravity. And in that shift, the Sigma male becomes magnetic without trying, because people are starving for real presence, for depth, for someone who doesn't fold under the weight of silence. And in a world built on distractions, that kind of stillness feels dangerous. When you're the one who can sit in silence and still feel whole, the world takes notice, even if it doesn't know why. There's a strange kind of authority in not needing to be seen. It creates a gap, a question mark, an aura. People start to project onto that space. They guess what you're thinking. They wonder what you're planning. That mystery becomes leverage. The less you offer, the more valuable your words become. That's not just charisma, that's control. It's not about being cold. It's about not offering warmth cheaply. You don't give energy to people who drain it. You don't entertain questions you've already answered with your actions. And you definitely don't perform to make others comfortable. That's what separates you. Most people crumble when their attention currency runs out. Sigma doesn't even use that currency. While others rent their identity to the crowd, Sigma builds value in silence, compound interest in isolation. And now that discipline is becoming the new aspiration. You're not running away from the world, you're simply choosing where your presence deserves to land, and that choice in itself is power. People don't defend those who beg for relevance, but they will rise to defend what they secretly envy. And what they envy most, a man who is complete without their applause. You've probably noticed it happening already. People who used to dismiss your energy are now defending it, not because they suddenly understand it, but because it makes them feel safer. In a culture addicted to reactions, your stillness becomes a refuge. And whether they admit it or not, they're drawn to that. Even in moments of disagreement, they respect your distance. They might not like how detached you are, but deep down they recognize something they lack. A center, a source, a code that doesn't shift based on opinion. You don't chase balance, you are balance, and that makes you dangerous, in the best way. That's why the defense is coming. That's why people are speaking up on your behalf. Because the longer they observe you, the more they realize you don't operate out of arrogance. You operate out of alignment. And in a world full of counterfeit identities, that's rare. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about people suddenly getting it. It's about your presence forcing a recalibration. You're not explaining yourself, but you're still shifting the room. You're not trying to win people over, yet you're building quiet loyalty everywhere you go. Some will protect you because they feel elevated around you. Others will defend you because they finally see what you were protecting all along, your peace, your clarity, your vision. They get it now. The silence was never empty. It was full of everything they were missing. That's why you're getting defended. Not because you're loud, but because you're needed. This isn't about finding a label to wear. It's about mastering a pattern to live by. Sigma was never meant to be a badge. It's a mode, a system, a blueprint for moving through the world on your own terms. And right now, that blueprint is evolving. What's emerging isn't just the lone wolf. It's the lone architect. Sigma 2.0 isn't hiding in the background. He's restructuring the background. You've probably felt it. The hunger to not just detach, but to design. To not just survive outside the system, but to build something that makes the system irrelevant. That's where this version of the Sigma archetype is heading. Less reaction, more architecture. Less resistance, more innovation. Sigma 2.0 isn't just the man who walks away. He's the man who walks with a blueprint in his back pocket and a new foundation under his boots. He doesn't need permission to rebuild his life from scratch. He's already done it in his mind 100 times before the first brick ever lands. And here's the brutal truth. Most people can't handle that kind of autonomy. They need groupthink to feel safe. They need consensus to validate their direction. But the Sigma male doesn't move off consensus. He moves off clarity. And clarity doesn't come from comfort. It comes from friction, solitude, recalibration, and vision. That's the part they don't see. This is the upgrade. No more waiting to be understood. No more apologizing for being self-sourced. Sigma 2.0 moves without the echo chamber. He builds without the applause. He adjusts without announcement. He disappears without drama and returns with results. And while others are still asking for guidance, the Sigma male has already built a system that eliminates the need for it. That's the shift. From passive detachment to active redefinition, from drifting away to redesigning direction. It's also why every room needs a ghost. In every crowded space, whether it's a workplace, a family system, a relationship dynamic, there's always one person who doesn't play by the normal social scripts. He doesn't respond to pressure the way others do. He doesn't perform to earn proximity. He doesn't signal for approval, but when he moves, things move. That's the ghost. You're not invisible, you're untouchable, not because you avoid connection, but because you don't need it to define your presence. People feel your boundaries before you say a word. They sense your time isn't open for casual use. They respect you even when they don't know why. That's ghost status. Not in the modern slang sense of disappearing from texts. In the real sense, you're not here to be consumed. You're here to be felt. And what's more, your detachment isn't cold. It's precise. You give energy with intention. You offer attention with limits. You don't do access for everyone. That's not selfish, it's sovereign. The Sigma 2.0 is not antisocial. He's socially strategic. He can navigate the room, lead when needed, exit when necessary, and observe always. He doesn't dominate with volume. He dominates with alignment. The more he understands himself, the less he needs the world to fill the space. This is what people are waking up to. The Sigma blueprint is no longer just admired. It's being studied. People want to understand how someone can move with so little friction and still create impact. They're watching how you walk into a room, say nothing, and still change the hierarchy. That kind of influence can't be faked, and that's why it can't be ignored. You know who can't stand the Sigma presence? The ones who run on external fuel. The people who can't go 5 minutes without validation, without noise, without a mirror to bounce their identity back to them. The very existence of a Sigma male shatters their system. Because Sigma doesn't play by those metrics. He isn't chasing likes, applause, or confirmation. He's rooted. And rooted people expose hollow ones without saying a word. Validation addicts feel uncomfortable around a Sigma because they can't control the feedback loop. They need emotional performance to feel alive. You don't perform. You don't overshare. You don't play therapist or circus act. You stay grounded, which makes them spiral. They might call you aloof, emotionally distant, arrogant, but none of that is true. You simply don't hand out emotional access like free samples, and that drives them insane. Then there's the noise cult, the ones who believe volume equals power. They think the one who talks most wins. They think being visible means being relevant. But Sigma doesn't engage with noise. He builds under it. He moves through it. While they're shouting, you're shifting, quietly, strategically. Noise is addictive. People use it to avoid stillness. But you live in stillness. You thrive in it. So when the noise cult sees that, it rattles them. They can't figure out why you're not reacting, not clapping, not posting, not performing, and your refusal to participate becomes an act of defiance. And that brings us to the real threat, the control machines. These are the systems built on predictability. They need to know where you are, what you believe, how you vote, what you fear, what you crave. Control needs a pattern. It needs you to be reactive, emotional, addicted to comfort, because that makes you programmable. But Sigma doesn't leave patterns. He leaves voids. You're hard to market to, hard to track, hard to guilt, hard to provoke. You don't play into mass identity or digital tribes. You don't cling to ideology for belonging. You move with nuance. You act from principle, and that terrifies the systems that rely on chaos to stay relevant. You don't panic when the media tells you to. You don't trend chase when the algorithm nudges you. You don't respond to synthetic urgency. That's sovereignty. And sovereignty doesn't fit neatly into a control grid. So yes, they label you. They try to reduce you to a meme or a trope. They'll say you're disconnected, emotionally stunted, or antisocial. But deep down, they know none of that sticks, because your results speak louder than their definitions, and results are hard to argue with. You live on your own frequency. You build when others collapse. You pause when others panic. You speak only when silence has done its work. You don't move for show, you move for impact. That's why you're not just misunderstood, you're feared, and eventually you're followed. The machines can't control what they can't predict, and they can't predict a man who writes his own code. You made it to the edge of the broadcast. Let them chase spotlight. You move in shadow. Let them talk in circles. You speak when silence is finished working. Let them burn out. You recharge in isolation. You're not here to explain. You're not here to entertain. You're here to ascend. So keep your circle tight, keep your energy clean, and keep your movements sharp. If they don't understand your distance, they weren't meant to reach you. Hit subscribe to Sigma Ascends, not for updates, for recalibration. Until the next drop, disappear wisely, return dangerous.